The concrete shortage that sounds too convenient. Rommel arrived in France and saw a coastline that looked defended, on paper. But the closer he got to the beaches, the more he realized the Atlantic Wall was less a wall and more a patchwork. The strangest part, Germany wasn't short on orders, slogans, or inspectors. It was short on time, unity, and the one thing Rommel couldn't command, Hitler's strategic attention. The central riddle is simple. If the Atlantic Wall was supposed to be Fortress Europe, why was it still unfinished when the Allies landed on D-Day? The popular explanation is not enough concrete. That's part of it, but it hides larger causes, a command rivalry, a shifting strategic priority, and a late pivot in German doctrine that came too late to turn beaches into death traps. Context: Fortress Europe versus a war going bad. By late 1943 and early 1944, Germany's situation was deteriorating fast. The Eastern Front consumed men, tanks, rail capacity, and political attention. Allied bombing campaigns battered industry and transportation. Meanwhile, the German leadership understood the Allies would eventually return to Western Europe, but not exactly when or exactly where. The Atlantic Wall, stretching from Norway to the Bay of Biscay, was a propaganda masterpiece. In reality, it was a sprawling construction program competing with everything else, repairing bomb damage, building U-boat pens, producing V-weapons, reinforcing the Eastern Front, and simply keeping the economy moving under air attack. And here's the catch: a wall is only a wall if it's consistent. The coast was too long, resources too finite, and German decision-making too fragmented to make every beach a fortress. Key players: Rommel, Rundstedt, Speidel, and Hitler's shadow. Three overlapping power centers shaped what happened. Erwin Rommel, appointed to help oversee defenses in northern France, was a war hero with political clout. He believed the invasion had to be crushed on the beaches, before Allied air power and logistics could build unstoppable momentum inland. Gerd von Rundstedt, Commander-in-Chief West, was an older-school strategist. His view leaned toward holding armored reserves back for a decisive counterattack once the main landing site was identified. He had seen too many feints and diversions to commit everything to the waterline. Between and around them were staffs, inspectors, and competing chains of command, especially the perennial issue of who controlled the panzer reserves, and when they could be released. Above all of them, Hitler, who micromanaged key decisions yet often delayed them, and whose priorities shifted between imagined threats, internal politics, and ideological certainty. This wasn't just a concrete problem. It was a decision architecture problem. Hello, listener, let me know where you're watching from. And if you don't mind subscribing to the channel and giving it a like, I'd be very pleased as the author. Enjoy listening. The plan, what the Atlantic Wall was supposed to be. The Atlantic Wall concept combined coastal strongpoints, bunkers, guns, casemates, beach obstacles, stakes, mines, hedgehogs, artillery coverage and observation posts, flooded lowlands and controlled terrain, mobile reserves, especially armored divisions, for counterattack. Rommel's emphasis was obstacles and mines, quickly, everywhere possible. He pushed for vast minefields and anti-landing defenses because he understood one harsh truth: German aircraft could not reliably contest Allied air superiority. If the Allies got inland, the war in the West might be decided within weeks. So Rommel tried to build a killing zone at the shoreline. But then something even stranger happened: the German defensive concept was not unified. Two philosophies competed: stop them at the beach versus counterattack after the landing. That doctrinal split determined where concrete went, where guns went, where men waited, and where they didn't. Decision point: the orders that came too late. Rommel's inspections in early 1944 were frantic. He issued directives to intensify mining and obstacle placement. He demanded more labor and more materials. He tried to accelerate the timetable. Yet the Atlantic Wall remained uneven because critical decisions were jammed in three bottlenecks. 1. Authority and control. Rommel could push, inspect, and demand, but he didn't fully control all forces. The panzers, in particular, were tangled in command arrangements. Some formations required Hitler's personal release to move, an arrangement that could cost hours at the exact moment hours mattered most. 2. Prioritization. Not every sector could be equally fortified. The Germans had to guess where the main blow would fall. Calais, closest to England, seemed likely. Normandy looked less obvious. German planning was heavily distorted by what the Allies later called deception operations, most famously the broader effort to convince Germany that Calais was the main target. The result, fortification priorities skewed. 3. Time. Even if Germany had unlimited concrete, workers, and rebar, fortifications take time: engineering surveys, forms, curing, transport, camouflage, ammunition storage, communications. In 1944, Germany did not have the luxury of time. A document that is still being debated in interpretation, Rommel's reports and later testimony from German staff officers, points to a recurring complaint. Berlin demanded fortress results while providing fractured authority and shifting priorities. Immediate consequences on D-Day: uneven wall, uneven battle. On June 6, 1944, the Allies hit Normandy with overwhelming naval, air, and ground power. The Atlantic Wall did not fail everywhere. It fought fiercely in some places, most famously at Omaha Beach, where terrain, surviving defenses, and strongpoints inflicted severe casualties. But overall, the wall's weakness showed in 3 ways. Gaps and inconsistencies. Some sectors had fewer mines, fewer obstacles, weaker gun positions, or poorer fields of fire. Communications and responsiveness. Once the landing began, confusion about where the main attack truly was, and who could move, slowed German reaction. Delayed armored counterattack. Panzers that might have struck earlier were held back or dispersed, partly due to command rules and partly due to uncertainty. Rommel's fear materialized. Once Allied troops gained a foothold and began building up men and supplies, Germany's ability to throw them back declined rapidly. The true cost: not just concrete, lives, momentum, and the West. The true cost of the Atlantic Wall being incomplete wasn't merely the loss of bunkers or guns. It was the loss of the one thing Germany needed: a chance to defeat the invasion quickly. Once the Allies secured Normandy, they created a protected logistical pipeline, airfields that moved tactical airpower closer, a growing mass of artillery, armor, and infantry Germany couldn't match. German casualties mounted in the battles of Normandy, the attritional struggle around Caen, and later the breakout and encirclement battles. The wall's failure to prevent a lodgment meant Germany fought a long retreat across France instead of a short, decisive defense at the coast. And politically, it shattered the Fortress Europe myth inside Germany's own leadership circles. Some officers later described the situation in bitter terms. Paraphrased, the wall existed in speeches more than in depth. What could have been done instead? Real alternatives. Historians disagree on what the best German defense would have been, but plausible alternatives include: 1. Unified doctrine. Earlier, if Germany had chosen one clear defensive concept, either beach defense with immediate local counterattack forces, or a deeper elastic defense with rapid armored release, it might have reduced the fatal hesitation. 2. Earlier concentration on likely sectors. If Normandy had been fortified to the level of Calais, more mines, more obstacles, more guns, better communications, the initial landing might have been far bloodier and slower. Whether it could have stopped the Allies is another question, because naval and air superiority were overwhelming. 3. Simpler command and faster release authority. Removing the bottleneck of top-level release for armored movement could have improved reaction time on D-Day. Even a few hours might have changed the fight for key road junctions and beaches. But every alternative hits the same hard limit. Germany was fighting a multi-front war under heavy bombing with insufficient fuel, dwindling experienced troops, and a leadership system that prized loyalty and control over flexibility. Myths and controversies. Was it really concrete shortage? The phrase "not enough concrete" is seductive because it's tangible. You can measure it, count it, blame it. But the deeper reality is, concrete wasn't the only constraint. Steel, transport, skilled labor, and time mattered as much. The wall was uneven by design and circumstance. Resources went where leaders believed the blow would fall. Doctrine and command structure mattered more than raw materials. An incomplete wall might still have worked better with faster concentration of reserves. One interpretation is that Rommel became a symbol of if only they had listened, especially in post-war narratives. Another interpretation is harsher. The system could not listen because the German command structure was built to centralize critical decisions and to keep rivals from becoming too powerful. And that leads to the uncomfortable conclusion: the Atlantic Wall was unfinished not because Germany didn't want it finished, but because Germany couldn't finish it under the way it was governing the war. Conclusion: the wall that wasn't a wall. So why was Rommel's Atlantic Wall incomplete? Because the Atlantic Wall was never one project with one boss and one coherent plan. It was a propaganda label attached to thousands of local projects, bunkers, mines, gun pits, trenches, built under air attack, across a massive coastline, inside a command system split by rival doctrines and political fear. Rommel tried to turn time into concrete. But time was the one resource Germany could not manufacture. And in the end, that's the riddle's answer. The wall didn't fail only at the beaches, it failed in conference rooms, and chain of command delays, and in strategic confusion. The Allies didn't just crack the Atlantic Wall. They exploited the fact that it was never truly whole.